So good afternoon and welcome to this NACE Curriculum Audit for Wales webinar. I'd like to start by introducing myself. I'm Chris Shepherd. I am NACE's Challenge and Curriculum Development Director and also the Executive Head of 2 primary schools in Bradford. And I had the pleasure of being involved in some work that NACE were doing in Wales in 2018. Visited 3 times for that, which I loved, mostly around Cardiff, but it was a wonderful experience. Now, I have led on MAT and the MAT agenda in 3 schools so far in my career. And like most leaders in school, I'm currently involved in ensuring that our curriculum design is fit for purpose and meets the needs of our more able, as well as providing challenge for all. And in this respect, NACE's Curriculum Audit is an absolutely brilliant tool in that it provides a framework and support to help us design and develop the new curriculum for Wales. So use of the framework, particularly part 2, which is the implementation section, provides a strategy for dealing with the often onerous and challenging task of designing a new curriculum, because it actually starts with strategy. And as such, its use will support whole school improvement. So during the session today, please put any questions that you have into the Q&A section or the chat box, and there'll be an opportunity at the end for me to go through those with you. So I'll leave about 10-15 minutes at the end for that. And also please check that you've put your name and your school name next to your log-on details. I think we call it a video window, even though I can't see you today. So welcome. So for those of you who perhaps aren't familiar with NACE, or for those of you who are, just a bit of a reminder that NACE is an independent charity. We work with schools and leaders right across the education sector. We're involved in policy making and research, and it's all around improving provision for the more able, but also driving whole school improvement and raising standards in provision for all through increasing the level of challenge for all learners. And NACE has over 40 years, well, almost 40 years experience in the field, and offers support to teachers, leaders and schools across the sector in whatever context or stage of development you're at. So the work of NACE across all areas of education, nationally and internationally, is underpinned by the 7 core principles which you can see here. Now, each one is vital if we're going to ensure the best outcomes for our more able and challenge for all. However, 2 of these are of particular importance in terms of today's webinar. So here we go, here's the first one. So I would say that these 2, whilst we are bearing in mind all of the core principles, these 2 particular core principles are the foundation of NACE's curriculum audit. So in terms of curriculum design and implementation, the needs of the more able are often overlooked. And at NACE, we believe that if we keep the needs of the more able central to this process, and in this case, to the design and implementation of the curriculum, not only will we address their needs, but also will provide better for all learners. So you can see here that that core principle is providing for more able learners is not about labelling, but about creating a curriculum and learning opportunities which will allow all children to flourish. And we know that that's at the heart of the new curriculum for Wales. We're talking about an ambitious curriculum. We're talking about developing high standards for all learners, developing them as all well-rounded individuals who are able to go out and find their role in society and make a valid contribution. So the question we all need to ask ourselves in terms of our curriculum is, does our curriculum create those learning opportunities which allow all of our more able learners to flourish, whilst also providing challenge for all? And use of the framework alongside the use of the curriculum audit alongside the challenge framework, if you have it, will support you in ensuring that you have that rich curriculum design. And the second part of this is that addressing the needs of more able learners will raise achievement for a much wider group of learners in the school. So again, it's back to that point of, if we aim to the top, we'll have a rising tide for every child. So as I said today, this is all about exploring the curriculum audit tool as a way of helping you to support your design and your implementation of your curriculum. So in terms of the new curriculum for Wales, we know that that's raised the bar in its scrutiny of what we call the substance of education and how well all pupils experience an ambitious, challenging and knowledge-rich curriculum. And Estyn and Welsh Government are looking for a deep and rich curriculum offer that does more than ensure pupil engagement, but one that creates opportunities for a deeper and richer content for those learners that will really stretch, challenge, and provide a range of different contexts within which pupils can work, often outside what is their normal experience. So if you have a look at the Estyn annual report from 1920 that's shown there on your slide, you can see that where Estyn found schools that were providing rich pedagogy and a rich curriculum, those teachers had a real passion for their subject and really high ambitions for what they wanted their students to achieve. So when you look at the curriculum audit, you'll see that that is a thread that runs through. Have subject area leads a really good understanding of their subject? Are they able to inspire the students? But in order to do that effectively, your curriculum needs to be coherently planned. And if you look on the right hand side, again, these are some key features that were identified as features of those really successful schools in terms of the curriculum that they have. So I'll let you read that list there on the right for a second. So as you can see there, one of the most important aspects of an effective curriculum is that it is effectively sequenced, that it's coherent, but it is also ambitious for all pupils, that the work given to pupils is demanding and consistently matches curriculum aims, and that teachers have expert knowledge of the areas they teach. And you can see that thread, or those threads, being picked up in the 12 pedagogical principles for the Welsh curriculum. And then that last point there, that teachers ensure that pupils embed key concepts in their long-term memory and apply them fluently. So the starting point for all of this is to ensure that curriculum design is sufficiently ambitious for the most able, whilst also creating opportunities for the nurture of that talent and ability. So we know, don't we, that teachers need also to have the skills and pedagogical knowledge to teach, and that's coming through Estyn's recent case studies into the implementation of the new curriculum in some schools. So in terms of personal development, what's also clear is that there needs to be opportunities for pupils to develop their talents and interests, and that those opportunities need to be of exceptional quality. So there's that interplay within your curriculum of challenge, opportunity and personal development. And again, the curriculum audit is a useful tool, I would say an essential tool, in helping you to shape that effectively and helping you to ensure that provision. Okay, so again, as you can see from this particular slide, some of the elements that have been picked up by Estyn in terms of their case studies into preparing the curriculum for Wales have been those key features on the right hand side there, and obviously they're on the left there. I unfortunately don't speak Welsh, but you can see that the top one there, develop a clear vision for the curriculum, learning and teaching. And again, that is a key principle underlying the NACE's curriculum audit, that what that audit will do is guide you through the process of developing that clear vision and then sequencing your curriculum effectively so that it does meet the needs of more able learners, and again, provide challenge for all. So hopefully, by the time we get to the end of this webinar, you'll see how the curriculum audit can support that process, particularly in terms of supporting you to establish clear design principles for the curriculum, developing your vision, as I said, teaching and learning, and revisiting and refining your approaches to teaching. I'll just have a check on the time, aren't we fine? So, have a look at these key themes and ideas that should sit at the heart of curriculum design. So if I let you have a look at them read them on your own for a second. So what the curriculum audit should do is help you to have discussions around your curriculum quality and your curriculum design in order to help you shape a really challenging curriculum. Because as you can see from this slide, it's those schools that have those really high expectations across the board and that relentless ambition for challenge, and are constantly seeking to review their practice, review their curriculum and how it's designed in terms of how the needs of the more able and those potentially more able are met, that are far more likely to be truly inclusive and successful schools. And when we want real challenge for all pupils, we have to consider how the curriculum, teaching and learning and assessment all impact on pupils' personal development. And again, those threads run throughout the audit, so that not only getting you to think about what your intent for your curriculum is, what you want from it, what your vision is, but also thinking about the pedagogy that's involved in getting there if your curriculum is truly to be ambitious. And we'll look at the elements of the audit shortly so that you'll be able to see how those threads are picked up. Assessment is another element that we'll be talking about briefly throughout the webinar. Okay, so again, just have a quick look at this. I don't want to rush you through it. If you just have a quick look at this one. Okay, so if we look at that first bullet point, using the audit allows leaders and teachers to map their MAT strategy. So that's your intent, in other words. Implement your planned initiatives, and in other words, your pedagogy, as well as the sequencing of your curriculum, and consider and evaluate the impact on more able learners, because we can have the most wonderful curriculum, can't we, on paper, but if it doesn't do what it says on the tin, if it doesn't then translate into positive outcomes for more able and then by default all learners, well, we're wasting our time. So what the curriculum audit does is it takes you through mapping your MAT strategy, i.e. your intent, implementing your planned initiatives, so that's your pedagogy, your 12 pedagogical principles and so on, and considering and evaluating the impact on more able learners. And what you'll see shortly is that the audit will ask you some key questions to help focus your thinking. So there are 26 descriptors in the framework altogether. And again, what they will help you do is to consider what you need to do to construct a quality curriculum. And those of you who are NACE members might already know this curriculum audit is free to you. So again, a really useful tool. And the edition for Wales, which is the one we're talking about this evening, you can get both in Welsh medium and English medium. Okay, so it should be, you know, if for those of you who are in the process of reviewing your curriculum or trying to implement your new curriculum for Wales, it's a fantastic tool to use because it will take you through that. For those of you who have already got a curriculum, it's a fantastic review tool because it allows you to evaluate different elements of your practice. And then from that, you can develop your action plan, which will then be very, very focused in terms of what needs to happen next. Okay, so these are the curriculum quality factors that have been identified by research. And these themes are evident in the curriculum work of Mary Myatt, and they were also identified in the research conducted by Estin. So the descriptors move through intent and implementation to impact. And they're the factors that research says are important when looking at and discussing curriculum quality. So if you think about the visits to schools that are outstanding and subject visits that have taken place, you'll find these qualities that are explored, especially in terms of progression, subject knowledge, distributed curriculum, and the joined up nature of those different areas of learning. And one of the other elements is that the importance of the intelligent use of assessment to inform curriculum design. And that's a really big one, because if you think about in terms of the Welsh curriculum, the mapping of the what matters statements and the descriptions of learning into schemes of work to inform curriculum design, assessment is a key feature. There is also, to support the curriculum audit, for those who want to delve deeper into the assessment side. So say, for example, you carried out the curriculum audit and you'd found that actually assessment of learning and assessment for learning was an area that you need to work on. You can then dive deeper by purchasing the assessment audit, which allows you to carry out a self-assessment of your work in school and develop a focused action plan and guide you through the process of making sure that your assessment procedures are absolutely tip-top and suited to the pupils that you have in your schools. So again, you can see here the key issues that were identified, or the key factors that were identified of being present in really effective schools in terms of their curriculum design and implementation. So the importance of those subjects as individual disciplines, but being joined up in terms of those areas of learning, and then using the curriculum to address disadvantage and provide equality of opportunity. The opportunities for regular curriculum review, which, as I've said, is one of the benefits of using the curriculum audit. Using the curriculum as a progression model. So as you look at the audit, you'll see how that's a thread that runs throughout it in terms of, have we got real progress in our curriculum? Is it progressive? Does it support the progress of those more able learners particularly? I've mentioned the intelligent use of assessment, but also that retrieval of core knowledge baked into the curriculum. And I can see, looking at the 12 pedagogical principles, that that's actually a really key strand, the importance of that core knowledge and those key skills. So again, the audit will help you identify whether that really is a strand running through at the right level for your more able learners. And then the importance of distributed curriculum leadership. Okay, you'll see me checking every now and again. I'm just checking the time. So what I've shown you here is, this is a snip. It's the first of two slides about the curriculum intent from the curriculum audit. So I just wanted to show you these to give you a flavour of what the audit looks like. So you can see at the top that for each strand, so you've got a variety of assessment criteria almost, or evaluation criteria. And for each one, you've got subsections. So for example, you can see here 1A, 1B, there's also 1C, 1D, etc. You would rate yourself as a school against each of those descriptors. And you can see those descriptors, the rating scores at the top there. So for example, a 1 would be this aspect is absent in curriculum design, and a 5 would be that this aspect of curriculum underpins and is central to the school's work, it's embedded, and so on. So if we look at the very simple, clear statement, first of all, from 1A, there is a clear and coherent rationale for the curriculum design. Now, it might be very easy to just go, yes, we understand what we're doing. But what the audit's then done is, if you look on the right-hand side here, is, it's asked you key questions around your provision for the more able and talented pupils. So, for example, does the rationale for your curriculum include a clear account of how the needs of more able learners will be met in curriculum design? Does the rationale explain how the endpoints towards which the curriculum is building are sufficiently ambitious? And that word ambition runs throughout, doesn't it, the new curriculum for Wales? Is it ambitious enough for the more able and also the exceptionally able? And does the rationale take account of how it will address any social disadvantage in terms of potentially able learners and so on, especially in terms of cultural capital? So this is an example of what the audit looks like. As I said, this is the some of snips from the intent section. So if you have curriculum leaders who are constructing endpoints and they haven't really thought about the most able, you've lost an opportunity. So we mustn't make assumptions that they're being challenged just because that's what we want to happen. We know that data alone won't tell us. So we need to consider whether we might be putting a ceiling on those pupils' achievement. Are our assessment processes right in terms of what we intend for those pupils? Are our option choices too narrow, or there's not enough enrichment? So at the point at which you're thinking of intent, you're also starting to think about all of those points. And you can see that in the second, for 1B on the right-hand side there, are the rationale and aims of the MAP policy, which describes curriculum provision and delivery and organisational design, which is when we come on to things like the option choices and so on, for more untalented learners, shared and understood by all heads of department or areas of learning leads or teachers and governors. Does everybody understand? Has everybody been part of defining that intent for your more able learners? So again, if you're checking prior learning, have you checked that some pupils aren't sitting through concepts that they are firmly, that they've already grasped? Or we know that sometimes more able learners, not always, but sometimes they don't need as much repetition. They grasp things a little bit more quickly. So then in terms of our intent, are we thinking about them moving through? Is there an opportunity for them to move through subject content whilst, more deeply, but also more quickly? And as I said, the audit will allow you to ask those questions. Now, if you think about subject leaders, or in your case in Wales, those people leading those areas of learning, through exploring these questions alongside the suggested evidence that you can see in this column, you start to build up a really clear idea as to whether your intent for your pupils is clear enough. And I would say that you can use the audit in many different ways. So you start it off for whole school use. You can all have a look at it together or individually and come back and discuss how you rated your school under the different sections. You might then decide, well, do you know what, let's all do it together. But now I'm going to give it to the people leading those areas of learning and see what their particular individual view is in terms of the areas that they're leading. Does it change? Is the intent for humanities, for example, different to somebody's intent for literacy? So, and then you can come back and compare, and it will allow you to see whether that joined up thinking in terms of your intent for your learners across school is clear. What some other schools do is they take an element at a time. So they might take just the intent section, review that in great depth with everybody, develop an action plan from it where necessary, and then move on to implementation. Or they may already feel quite comfortable in terms of their intent, but they're a bit worried about their implementation, so they just focus on that. So there are different ways in which you can use the audit really effectively to shape your future provision, and also to make yourself feel more confident about what's already happening. Okay, so this is the second snip from the one of the intent criteria, and you can see we've got things like curriculum leaders show understanding of important concepts related to curriculum design, such as that knowledge progression. and sequencing of concepts. And this is where you might get a bit of a split view, because some leaders in the school, if you look at that top descriptor there in the third column, how well do curriculum leaders articulate and show good understanding of how curriculum design can take account of the needs of MAT learners when considering planning for knowledge progression and sequencing? Well, one group of people in school, senior leaders, for example, might think, yeah, our curriculum, our people leading our areas of learning can articulate it to some degree, but I think perhaps that needs tightening up a bit. We need to be more explicit, especially in terms of what we're doing for our more able. Whereas you might have the areas of learning leads themselves thinking, no, I can articulate it. And when you've got that dichotomy, you need to bring everybody back together and thrash that out. But what this audit does is allow you to do that through that rating system. And as we know, any good self-evaluation really needs honesty and evidence. So however you're using the audit, we would strongly suggest that you encourage each person or group to keep notes in that final column in terms of where they see their curriculum. What's their justification for, or their evidence for the score that they've given, where they think the school is or where they think they are as a curriculum lead, and so on. And then you can see there's a question about progression. And again, it talks very specifically about whether MAT learners, including the disadvantaged and potentially more able, have got a strong academic core in terms of the areas of learning, as well as sufficient opportunity to access a wide range of curriculum domains. And again, that's a thread that you can see through the Welsh curriculum. It's not just about the academic, but it's about pulling all that together: vocational, technical, physical and artistic as well. And then you can see whether that follows through into the sixth form and beyond. And then that final bit of a question that you can see there: does planning for the new curriculum for Wales for purposes help to develop children and young people as, and then it goes through the 4 purposes, so that you can start thinking about whether your curriculum for the more able does exactly what it should be doing in terms of those core purposes. Okay, again, I'll just check the time. Fine. So this next part is a section from the implementation part of the audit. And as you can see, again, I've taken a bit of a snip. This time I've taken one from section 3 of the implementation, another one from criteria 5. And as I've said before, as we know, we can have the most wonderful intentions for our curriculum, but it's how that translates into implementation, i.e., what happens in the classroom. Are those pedagogical principles being reflected in what you do in your classroom? And as we know, every single one of them is essential. So again, there are 5 key implementation criteria, and each one's broken down. So you end up with about 15 subsections to guide your effective curriculum implementation. So the first one you can see there is areas of learning leaders, or leaders of areas of learning at all levels, have clear roles and responsibility in relation to curriculum design and delivery, which you think that seems to be a fairly straightforward question. But then when you look at it in terms of the more able, does the MAT lead have really clear defined roles in terms of supporting the implementation of a high quality curriculum for more able learners? And do those subject leaders, those areas of learning leads, also understand their responsibility in terms of creating that curriculum for the more able and talented learners? And then I've taken a snip. So it starts with that leadership, and then it delves down into that pedagogy. And for example, if you look at this one, it's from section 5, it's about curriculum resources. So how often, what the audit's getting you to think about is how often are we thinking about whether the curriculum resources that we're using, and again, thinking back to having that ambitious curriculum, how well do our curriculum resources, including our textbooks and the resources that we use, meet the needs of more able learners and provide that really good stretch and cognitive challenge? And you know, I know I keep saying more able, I'm including the talented within there. What are the resources that are available for those students? And is every leader right across your school aware of those, and have they told all the other people that work within their subject area or within that year group, if it's a primary, what there is available? Does everybody have ownership of that? Has that been thought about? And then if you think about that second point there on the right, does the selection of resources enable MAT learners to be inducted into the language which defines each area of learning in its own right? So do the resources support your students, your children, understanding what the language of a good historian would be, or an expert geographer or an expert scientist? Are your resources reviewed to the extent to which they do that? So again, you can see how deeply this audit will take you and how much evidence you will gain from that about your current practice, and how it will guide you in really focused action planning. Let's check the time. Okay, so this is another snip from the implementation section. I've taken section 6 this time, just to show you how, again, how deeply this digs into that implementation and that pedagogy. So in terms of curriculum design, first of all, we've got, does the curriculum have sufficient depth and coverage of knowledge in the areas of learning and experience? So the question there is, do subject or area leads and curriculum plans ensure that MAT learners are able to work in breadth and depth and accrue that rich knowledge and skill base across all areas of learning and experience? And where appropriate, do they have access to additional support? And then you've got, how well does the area of learning and experience design enable MAT learners to make links across areas and gain that secure conceptual understanding? So it's the quality of discussion that you get from using this audit that's key to its use. So it will allow you to think about the breadth and depth that you are providing for your MAT learners. So how do you teach for deeper learning? Does everybody in the school understand that? You know, if you look at that very last point on the right there, sorry, the top of 6C, does curriculum mapping ensure that there is sufficient breadth and depth of content over time to enable the most able learners to reach ambitious endpoints? And there's that word ambitious again. And have the requirements in terms of the national curriculum or your exam requirements been met, but exceeded? And remember, in some schools, what we find is that students are rushed through. We're just ticking a box. Is, you know, where is your curriculum allowing for those students to go deeper? How do you enable young people to be active meaning makers and able to make those connections and transfer their learning? There's a really good bit in the book Teaching for Deeper Learning by Jay McTighe and Harvey Silver, which we will put the reference to in the chat at the end on this. What's also important in the implementation section is the section on assessment, because as we've said already, we know that's a key element of your implementation of the curriculum in Wales. So again, there's you've got to consider what your assessment looks like. Does it enable learners to learn more deeply? Is it assessing the right things? Is it fit for purpose in terms of MAT learners? So again, all of this will guide your practice. Again, I'm just checking the time. Right, now in terms of impact, this is my final snip from the curriculum audit. And you can see here again, you've got a key question here. The curriculum is successfully implemented to ensure progression in knowledge and pupils successfully learn the curriculum. So again, you could sort of, you know, see people taking that at face value and go, no, yeah, it's fine. You know, we've got a good curriculum and we've thought about its progression, but we have to ask ourselves, don't we, far deeper questions about this. So as you can see there again, do more able learners develop very detailed knowledge and advanced level skills, securing high achievement and the pathway to ambitious future career paths? And how do we know this? You know, often in many schools, we can be accused of just, let's get to the end of the curriculum and that's it. But are we really allowing our MAT learners to get those advanced skills that they need? And is their knowledge really detailed? And again, that comes back to assessment. How do we know? Now, if we have a look here, how well do lesson observations or work scrutiny and learning discussions and data show us this? Do we know, do our assessment procedures really tell us that our students know more and remember more and they can do more in terms, you know, at an advanced level? Are they producing work of a consistently high quality in both terms of that quality, but also volume, and taking pride in their work? Do they have that really excellent knowledge and those detailed skills that allow them to work at an advanced rate? And are they challenged in whatever subject? And you think about that literacy that's running through the Welsh curriculum as well. Are they challenged to write in a complex and extended way? But also all those wonderful skills that you need in terms of their ability to debate and discuss with each other. And often we can just say yes to those questions, but we haven't really delved into whether it's really a yes. So do our assessment processes, do our monitoring and evaluation processes really support what we're saying is happening? Because we know that it's our analysis of the impact that's going to tell us whether a curriculum really is doing what it says. So are the curriculum intentions being met, and how do we know? And again, your evidence from this, as you can see from that list there, should be wide ranging. Now, from this point, your action points can lead into that strategic action plan. And then, you know, if you keep your scores at each point, it will allow you to then say, well, this is where we were when we first looked at this section, you know, and we've done an action plan around those particular scores. Now that we've put some of those actions into, we've actually embedded some of those actions, where are we now? And you can go back and re-review. And I would strongly suggest that you regularly do that, because again, we know that our pupils change, our students change, the nature of our context might change. And therefore our curriculum has to be responsive to those pupils and their ever-changing needs. So again, that regular review. And again, you might, as I said before, take one element then and say, you know, we were fine. When we did this before, we were fine with our intention. There was a little bit around our implementation that we needed to work on in terms of the pedagogy that we were using for our more able and our talented pupils. So now that we've put some of that into action, has it been effective? Let's review our implementation and the impact from that using the audit. Okay, and as I said, you can just take that one section or you could redo the whole thing. So it works in many different ways. Okay, so shortly there will be some time for us to have at least a typed discussion. So just bear with me a second, because what I'm going to do now is just give you a little bit of an overview. You know that if you aren't a member, you can purchase the curriculum audit, but it is free for everybody that's a member already. You can also purchase a half-day consultancy to support its use in school. So if you wanted guidance, if you wanted bespoke support with an element of the curriculum audit or the whole thing, you can also purchase that alongside the audit. And then it shows you, if you are a member, how you can download that audit for use in your school. And just a little heads up there, that little bit in orange at the bottom, there is additional consultancy, bespoke CPD, coaching and mentoring also available. And there's a link there on how you can find out more about that. But before we move on, I just wanted to mention again that assessment is a theme that you've seen is captured within the curriculum audit in the implementation section. And we know that effective assessment policies, practices and processes are vital if we're going to ensure that that information, that learning and those skills are being committed to learners' long-term memory, particularly in terms of the more able, and that whatever we're doing is helping the ambitious curriculum goals to be achieved. So we've now got this assessment audit as well, and this can be used alongside the curriculum audit to evaluate the extent to which assessment across your school and your curriculum supports the highest quality education of the more able, and again, challenge for all learners. And having used the curriculum audit in one school that's considered outstanding, and I'm using it in another one to turn that school around, it's been an absolutely invaluable tool. So I am, hand on heart, would absolutely advocate it for if you're looking at developing your curriculum, but also that driving of school improvement and helping you to develop those really focused action plans around your curriculum vision, but also the practice that takes place and how effective that is in terms of your impact. I can't recommend it strongly enough. But I have to say that I've now started to look at, with my staff, the assessment audit, because we're using that to start refining our assessment processes, and they do work hand in hand. And I don't think I'd realised before we started our whole journey of curriculum design or redesign how important that scrutiny of your assessment processes actually is, and how much that can impact on what your curriculum looks like. So again, another great tool to recommend to you. Now, in a few moments, we'll have a chance for responding to any of your questions. But before we do, I just want to point you in the direction of the different ways to get in touch with NACE. So you've got those 4 different ways on screen there, including our Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. And then you've just got the NACE email, the info@nace.co.uk. There's also the Ask NACE offer, which you can, this is where you can book a 45-minute support call with a NACE associate, and you can say, I want to talk about leadership of the more able, or I want to talk about designing a curriculum for the more able, because I've started on this journey, I've started using the audit, and I could do with some advice. Or it can be anything related to the MAT agenda. And you can book those calls and you'll get that bespoke support for you. Okay, so before we go back to have a look at to think about the questions that you've asked, and I can see some hopping into the chat box, which is brilliant. I just wanted to pose to you some thoughts for the day, and I'll give you a chance to read these in a second. But I think just a reminder, we know that Welsh Government, Estyn and the consortia all see professional development as the key to success in terms of the new curriculum, in terms of its design, and that this will determine the degree of success on its implementation. So we know that the Welsh Government have delayed implementation of the new curriculum by a year in secondary schools to give you more opportunity for good professional development to upskill staff. So I just wanted to reiterate that really. We know, and part of using a tool like the curriculum audit is going to support that professional development for you. So I would like to thank you in advance, and please stay and let's explore some of these questions, because I think that you will always find, oh, that's a question I might have asked. But before we go on to that, I'll give you a moment to read both of these bits of information on here as your thoughts for the day. I always am a bit aware that I might not be giving you long enough to read it. But both of these quotes come from Estyn's Preparing for the Curriculum. Oh, that's my timer. Both of them come from Estyn's Preparing for the Curriculum for Wales case studies that was published last November. And you can see on the left there, what they were saying was that there wasn't enough professional learning, or there wasn't enough opportunity for professional learning for schools to have understood the whole school curriculum design process for a variety of reasons. But what they said was, what's important was that schools needed to have that clear purpose and consider the impact on pupils' progression across the curriculum. And they didn't necessarily have effective systems to evaluate the impact of planned change. So, you know, hopefully from this webinar, you can see how the audit will support you with that. And then on the right hand side, you had from one of the case studies an example of how effective practice had been, because leaders had really reviewed honestly their current school curriculum, and they'd thought about how it was aligned with those 4 purposes. And they were also, because of that, they were aware of their strengths and areas for development relating to teaching and learning. So they knew about where there were issues with assessment, or there were issues in relation to pedagogy, or the whole implementation process. So I thought those were both really useful to have a look at and have a think about. And you'll be able to catch it. But again, you can watch these again on the webinar. So what I'll do now is I will go to your questions. Go back to the any questions slide. I should really put that at the end, shouldn't I? But before I do, thank you to all of you for listening. I hope you found it useful. Hopefully it's given you an overview of what the benefits of the value of the curriculum audit. Okay, so if anybody's got a question arising from this webinar, please tell us now. Let's strike while the iron's hot. I was just going to, earlier on, I was looking at the pedagogical principles and seeing how much of what the audit will allow you to pick up on is absolutely threaded through it. So hopefully you'll find it useful when you get back to school. But for all of you who are members, if you're not using it yet, please have a look at it, because I think you'll find it really beneficial. And for those of you who aren't members, it's definitely either worth purchasing or become a NACE member, because then you get that for free, but also you get all the other resources available on the NACE website that will enable you to make sure that your provision for MAT learners is of the highest quality.